Hmm. Yeah. So, there are some thoughts. So yeah, just doing this video. Didn't expect to do it, but I will. Think I was gonna have to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Indiana Jones series with what is arguably the weakest film of the series. Not the worst film ever. So, yeah. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a pretty polarizing film amongst the Indiana Jones fan base, weirdly enough. Um, and I do these things on Instagram where I have the live commentaries. They actually are live commentaries because I'm recording and then I'm watching the movie as it goes along. And I just recently, today, I did for Raiders of the Lost Ark. I rewatched today and I remembered how Raiders of the Lost Ark is so good that I feel like even in Temple of Doom, even Last Crusade, they stumbled back, a lot. I feel like something I've learned is that they're never going to capture the magic that Raiders had. I think it's because, like, let me look at the Indiana Jones screenwriters over the years. All right, and Jones. Damn, Indiana Jones series writers. So I'm looking at all the screenwriters. Indiana Jones, Wikipedia. So yeah, cast and crew. Cast and crew. So yeah, additional crew and production details. So for Raiders, obviously it was. I'm looking at Raiders here now. So yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Story by George Lucas and I do know Philip Kaufman, American director and screenwriter. Let's see. Um, The Unbearable Light of Being, Rising Sun, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and The Wanderers, and yeah, The Right Stuff. The guy who directed The Right Stuff, Philip Kaufman, was the story writer. And the script was written by Lawrence Kasdan, which, yeah, Lawrence Kasdan, who is one of my all-time favorite screenwriters. And he's also a really good director, Lawrence Kasdan. So if I look up, yeah, filmmaking credits, Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Body Heat, Continental Divide, Return of the Jedi, The Big Chill, Silverado, Accidental Tourist, Grand Canyon, The Bodyguard, Wyatt Earp, Mumford. His career only slightly stumbled with Dreamcatcher, and he returned to do Force Awakens and Solo: A Star Wars Story, which, you know, that was pretty good in and of itself. And then, Temple of Doom was someone else, if I'm not mistaken. Temple of Doom was two other writers. Yeah, story by George Lucas, but the screenwriters, Willard Hayek and yeah, which is interesting. Willard Hayek, who actually was one of the screenwriters for American Graffiti and was one of the script doctors on the original Star Wars, because that movie, from what I know, was constantly rewritten during production. Yeah, Temple of Doom and oh man, this is sad here. Howard the Duck, but his first movie was called Best Defense, a comedy film, uh, which I don't think made enough money. Yeah, negative reviews, which after Howard the Duck, he decided not to direct, and then he did Radioland Murders, which was a pretty good film. And right here, Gloria Katz was married up to Willard Hayek until her death. So yeah, Radioland Murders stuff. And then the third one, Last Crusade, third installment, was written by. All right, so story by George Lucas and Menno Mejis, a Dutch-born screenwriter. All right, so Color Purple, Ricochet, story treat writer for Ricochet, and uncredited screenwriting works on Empire of the Sun. And this is what's interesting here is the screenwriter on the script, Jeffrey Bohm, who was one of the writers on all the Lethal Weapon movies. Um, which I think that's why they worked, in my opinion. I know some people say that Shane Black was the glue that held the first two Lethal Weapon films together. I think it was Jeffrey Bohm, but then again, here, Inner Space, The Lost Boys, Last Crusade, Lethal Weapon 1, 2, and 3. Um, but his last film was The Phantom, and late scripts. Yeah, so he ultimately retired from that, and he sadly passed away in January 24th, 2000, due to a rare heart failure from lung disease. And then the fourth movie was written. Looking at all the screenwriters here, I'm just going really crazy here. I go all in when it comes to these videos. But don't worry, we are going to react to some videos. Yeah, story by George Lucas and Jeff Nathanson. Um, Oh, okay. Rush Hour 2, Catch Me If You Can, and The Terminal, um, Tower Heist, and more recently, but recently his career has faltered with the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean film and The Lion King, to which even Jeff Nathanson, screenwriter of since he wrote Lion King, he actually admitted that he did not he wasn't really excited for it. But the real scriptwriter was David Koepp, who all right, I'm looking at it here. David Koepp, Death Becomes Her, Jurassic Park, Carlito's Way, The Shadow, Mission Impossible, the first one, Trigger Effect, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, of which Koepp was the second unit director, Snake Eyes, Stir of Echoes, Panic Room, the first Spider-Man movie, Secret Window, War of the Worlds, Zathura, Ghost Town, Angels and Demons, Premium Rush, and yeah, he's not made some recently good stuff. Recently, it's just Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, and Mordecai, which was awful. Inferno, not good. The Mummy, the new one, not good. You Should Have Left, meh. It's sad, with Crystal Skull, but I think the movie really was ruined due to Lucas had way too much involvement, and I'm hoping for this next film that since they have James Mangold directing, I'm hoping that Mangold sort of makes it a return to form, and I have complete faith in James Mangold. Honestly, I mean he's made some really good films, and right here it seems that yeah, I'm reading it here. Story by David Koepp, Jonathan Kasdan, and John Kasdan. I remember that name correctly. Um, Jonathan Kasdan, In the Land of Women. That was a good movie, and The First Time, another good movie, and Roadies. And he also wrote Solo, a Star Wars story, and he's also the showrunner for the new Willow series that's going to be on Disney Plus. And Dan Fogelman, if I remember that name, I think I know that name. Yeah, Dan Fogelman, this guy right here. Um, he's mostly known for his work on This Is Us, and he's done mostly a lot of comedy films and drama films like Cars, Fred Claus, Bolt, Tangled, Crazy Stupid Love, Guilt Trip, Las Vegas, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which he produced. Danny Collins and Life Itself, not really that good. Earlier draft of Indiana Jones 5, but mostly This Is Us. And but it seems that Mangold is they're going with the Mangold treatment, and it's interesting. This film's screenwriters here, yeah, John Henry Butterworth is an English screenwriter who has co-written several screenplays with his brother, Jez Butterworth. Um, by the way, if you see why my hand is shiny, it's because I scraped it accidentally on a wall. I was trying to take my dog out, trying to hold my dog back, and just went through it, and it was like, damn it, my hand hurts. But yeah, he wrote Edge of Tomorrow, Get On Up, and Ford v Ferrari, which was directed by Mangold. So yeah, and Jez Butterworth right here. Um, let's see what else he's done. Films. Edge of Tomorrow, Get On Up, Black Mass, Spectre, Ford v Ferrari, and did some uncredited script work on Cruella. And yeah, I hope this film actually looks like something that was shot on film. Although, which is interesting because Fedon Papamichael is the DP on this, and he's actually worked a lot with Mangold before. I've mentioned him a lot on my videos. Um, but that's the thing is that yeah, I think they're actually shooting this movie digitally, but I hope it looks more like film. Yeah, marking his sixth film with Mangold. Spielberg confirmed that. Yeah, so it looks like this film is coming out on July 29, 2022, the fifth one. And principal photography just recently began, so yeah. And I mean, you got a pretty decent cast here. You got Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, sign me up. Thomas Kretschmann, underrated actor. Boyd Holbrook, really great actor, who actually was in Logan. But before Logan, he was Agent Murphy from Narcos. And Toby Jones is also in the movie. See, yeah. Um, he is known for DEA agent Steve Murphy in the Netflix series Narcos, and Donald from he was in Logan as one of the main villains. I think the main villain, sort of. Shawnette Renee Wilson, known for her roles in Black Panther as one of the members of the Dora Milaje. So yeah, but like I mentioned, I have complete faith. Like, I mean, Copland, Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Identity, Walk the Line, 310 Yuma, which is one of the best movie remakes in recent memory. Night and Day, yeah, it's good to a certain degree. Wolverine, Logan, and Ford v Ferrari. I mean, yeah, I hope Mangold does right, and we might get a truly great Indiana Jones film since Raiders. But anyways, Schmodown Entertainment Network. You want to know how old I am? I still remember when they used to be called Schmoes No. Yeah, I'm that old. But they did this through someone else, a critic named Chris Hartwell. And this is the thing, the film negative series that the Schmoes do, where Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull succeeds. I don't know what's gonna happen. Let's just watch this video and see what happens. I'm gonna really check how long we've been here because I had to talk. All right, let's just do this. But
When it comes to people's opinions on movies, we live in an era of extremes.
yeah,
A film is either the best thing ever, or it's an abomination that any right-minded human should be ashamed of liking.
yeah.
But when it comes down to it, what exactly makes those bad films worthy of that hate? One clunky performance, a handful of cheesy lines, a smattering of familiar plot points? And perhaps more importantly, is there found beneath that egregious element something missed? Something good, something actually worth our time.
Speed Racer is actually a good movie.
Maybe not. But let's find out together. Welcome to Film Negative.
Let me just get my phone here.
Since the inception of this series, there have been few films as regularly requested as this one, and indeed, over all of my years of film-focused discourse, there have been few films that I've found myself defending more than Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So, let's do this. Like I've always freely admitted about every film that we've explored here, Indiana Jones 4 is by no means perfect, or even great.
No.
The more that I watch it, the clearer it becomes that Spielberg has really matured beyond this character and this franchise, or at least the version of this character that so many of us fell in love with. As such, this film is simply unable to possess the same kind of youth, energy, and edge found in its 1980s counterparts.
That's because I think when they initially did Raiders, they had signed a 5 picture deal with Paramount, and so they had already done Raiders, then Temple, and then Last Crusade, and then yeah, and the fact is, like Crystal Skull went through a long method of development hell. I remember specifically there was even a draft that was at one point written by M. Night Shyamalan. Then there was also another draft by Darabont, which that was the version Spielberg wanted to do, but Lucas did not like it. And since Spielberg was close friends with Lucas, it's like, oh man.
Part of the reason that Raiders of the Lost Ark unequivocally remains my favorite in the series, as well as,
Hmm.
I would argue, the best, was in making.
That is true. In my opinion, Raiders is still the best. I have watched Raiders countless times. I know there are people who will say, but Last Crusade is the best one. Like I understand why people like Last Crusade better. Like I said, I just feel like there's a magic to Raiders of the Lost Ark that I just cannot see in Last Crusade. I still love Last Crusade, but Temple of Doom and Last Crusade are like those follow-ups in an installment where it's like I like them, but I love them, but I don't like love them like their first installment. Like if I think about it, Back to the Future, the first one, masterpiece. I've seen that film countless times as a kid, and the trilogy, but as I've grown older, I've seen several problems with parts 2 and 3. Although I do find myself enjoying part 3 more than part 2 in recent memory. That's just me, though. I'm in that minority who likes part 3 over 2. But the thing with Back to the Future parts 2 and 3 was that, in my opinion, they were never able to capture the magic that the first Back to the Future had, because the first Back to the Future was a very, very original thing. It's like, if you were the same age as your parents, would you go to school with them? And, would you be friends? Something like that. That's what made Back to the Future work. And that's what made Raiders work. If I look at my top 5 favorite films of all time, I have Back to the Future, I have Raiders, and yeah, that's why Raiders has more magic, I guess, in my opinion, than Last Crusade does. But yeah. Ugh.
Spielberg had something to prove. At the time, he had just come off his first Behemoth failure, 1940.
1941, which it was a movie that Spielberg did as just like after, I think it was after Close Encounter of the Third Kind, and he just wanted something to do. And this was when Spielberg and Zemeckis were just starting. Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, and Bob Gale. And so they wrote the script. I think 1941 holds up better than Crystal Skull, though.
41. And was consequently desperate to prove to his industry and to his audience that he was still the same wunderkind who had cranked out the brilliant Duel, Jaws, and Close Encounters of the Third
No love for Sugarland Express. That was an underrated movie.
Kind. As such, he handled Indy's first outing with this reckless abandon that is totally felt in the finished product. It's loose, daring, inventive, and raw.
Now you're getting nasty.
Clearly directed by someone who was willing to just trust his gut and take as many risks as possible. So, with this fourth entry, which was made after decades of box office and critical success,
Yeah, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, E.T., Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List.
Spielberg, in the way that he directed the film, played a lot of it very safe, leading to a film that never quite had the same lightness of touch or youthful vigor found in Raiders, or even Temple and Last Crusade. And to make things tougher, in the elements that were different, it never felt like Spielberg was fully able to press into them in a way that felt wholly satisfying. And that is where my genuine gripes with this film end.
Not as easy as it used to be.
But what about CG gophers, monkeys, and ants? And what about a nuked fridge? And what about, horror of all horrors, aliens? We will get to those in a bit. But again, to reiterate, my aim here is not to convince you that Crystal Skull is some masterpiece, but simply to help you understand that If you worship at the altar of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade,
That was
loving
an
that
epic
trilogy's
moment,
overall tone, consistent formula, characters, action set pieces, and genre, then there really are very few reasons that you shouldn't be able to at least put this film on every once in a while and actually enjoy.
Who knows? I am hoping with the recent 4K master that Spielberg went back and fixed the color palette, because the film has a very digital clean look to it, which is sad. Despite the fact that it was shot on film and that they shot it with anamorphic lenses, although this shot though looked really cool. The shot looks like the crystal skull looks like it's out of a comic. There are aspects of this movie that I enjoy. I will say I recently rewatched it, and I'll give my verdict at the end. Uh, After this damn thing.
But how can I say this? Two reasons. One, this film isn't actually, in its overall tone, formula, characters, and action set pieces, all that different from its three younger brothers.
Same old, same old.
Two, and this undoubtedly will be more controversial, the places that it is different are not only logically divergent, but thoughtfully, intentionally, and rewardingly so. But let's not waste any more time. Let's start right now talking about the elephant in the room. This
Alien.
Indiana Jones adventure has the audacity of making its primary MacGuffin aliens. Or rather,
interdimensional beings, in point of fact.
Now, we'll talk in a moment about exactly why Indiana Jones creator George Lucas pushed for that extraterrestrial MacGuffin.
Yeah, this was right after the prequels, and Lucas, I think, was still suffering with the problems of the prequels. Like, my issues with the prequels are really in this movie.
But first, let's focus on how, in the actual specifics, that it's not that different at all from the other ancient religious artifacts found.
It is different because they're all based on certain religions. The Holy Grail, Cup of Christ. The stones, even though they're not as interesting as, like, say, the Ark of the Covenant, or I don't know why the idol is. I would put the Ark of the Covenant, but yeah.
Found in Raiders, Temple, and Last Crusade. Firstly, focusing on appearance alone, the Crystal Skull can easily sit alongside this, and this. It's a physical prop that feels both tactile and real, but also ethereal and foreign. Additionally, like every one of Dr. Jones's past MacGuffins, it's an ancient artifact hidden by a past generation that worshipped and
Although that it is cool, I think the lens flares worked well in Crystal Skull because Spielberg had kind of ruled off shooting anamorphic for a while, and then just for Crystal Skull, he was like, let's shoot anamorphic, because I think if you shoot, like, Crystal Skull, and if you shot it, like, with spherical lenses, where you shot the full 4x3 and you had to crop down the image to 239, it would not work. So yeah, sort of works in that idea. I'm gonna sit back.
revered it, and now has been found by our titular character in some kind of underground, booby-trapped cavern. Tracking so far, all very similar.
Come on, genius.
Then, after that discovery, it is passed back and forth between the heroes and the villains, all the while both parties slowly realizing its greater power and significance. A power and significance that are made known through the reading of cryptic texts, encounters with ancient guardians of that MacGuffin, and inexplicable supernatural occurrences, such as mind control and the breaking of natural laws. Until we reach the climax of each film, where that power manifests itself fully, which, each time, yes, even in Crystal Skull, is visualized in very similar ways. A swirling, face-melting light. And not only that, in all 4 entries, the victims of this destructive power are the same, the villains, because they've been pursuing that power out of their arrogance and greed. So even while the ultimate source of that power is something different, it changes the narrative beats not at all. But yes, even while all of the MacGuffins look similar enough and are treated the exact same ways in chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, even while that is true, at the end of the day, interdimensional beings are qualitatively different than Yahweh and some Eastern mystic power. So, how and why could that change be anything but bad? Well, let's take a step back and examine how and why it was made. George Lucas, back when he conceived of the character in the late 1970s, wanted to pay homage to his favorite action-adventure serials of the 30s and 40s, intentionally riffing on what were the B-movies of that era.
It's a throwback to an older kind of film. It's a high adventure in the mode of the old Saturday morning serials.
Logically then, he placed his lead character in the 1930s and 1940s, having him reenact the same kind of daring feats found in Flash Gordon, Don Winslow of the Navy, and Commander Cody. But when Lucas, Spielberg, and Ford returned to the franchise in the early 2000s, due to their star's age, they were forced to set the film in the late 1950s, a decade that had a very
That would make, that's the only part that really does make sense, because it had been like years since Last Crusade, so yeah.
different kind of B-movie. Errol Flynn and Zorro had been replaced with Saucermen from Mars and Tarzan. So, again, if Raiders, Temple, and Last Crusade were set in the 1930s and 40s, and therefore based off the action-adventure B-movies of that decade, doesn't it at least make sense that the next entry, which was set in the subsequent decade, be based off of its B-movies? And while, of course, many of you right now are screaming at your screens, no, the formula was set, Chris, and it was a good formula, and there was no need to change it, ever. Let me remind you that you didn't fall in love with Raiders of the Lost Ark because it perfectly adhered to some formula that you already knew and loved. You fell in love with it because it was fresh and alive and reflected honestly who Lucas, Spielberg, and Ford were at that point in their lives. To simply try and repeat that then, decades later, would just feel tired, clinical, and disingenuous. Of course, we're not done yet. There is still a nuked fridge and dozens of film-ruining CG gophers and monkeys to discuss. While yes, surviving a nuclear blast by hiding in a lead-lined fridge is indeed the most extreme thing that Dr. Jones has ever done, let's not pretend that it's the only completely over-the-top feat that he survived.
The problem is that, at least in the first three, it felt practical.
As for the gophers and monkeys, yes, their CG aesthetic is indeed different than what we saw in the first three entries. But we'd all be lying if we said we loved the effects in the first three films because they were always fully realistic. And finally, and probably most importantly, these three oh-so-horrid elements that I just mentioned account for less than 5 minutes of a 2-hour and 4-minute film. A film that has a number of outstanding, completely practical action set pieces. Numerous...
The interesting thing is that Daniel Sudik, I always keep mentioning, was the special effects coordinator on this, which is interesting because he did both this and Iron Man, the first one, at the same time. And he had also done War of the Worlds with Spielberg. So yeah, there are some good practical effects, I will say. But it feels like,
beautiful real-life locations and dozens of intricate, physically realized sets. When it's all said and done, though, the element of this film that I will always most confidently hang my praise on is the way that the filmmakers handled the lead character. This is still Indiana Jones. This is still Indiana Jones. And this is still Indiana Jones.
Part-time.
I really wish I could do an edit of this movie where I get the version that was in the trailer and I put it there because that was the most epic part of the trailer for me. You know, where it's like, you're a teacher? It's like, part time. And here he just says it like this.
And this is still Indiana Jones.
Part-time.
Feels like they said that line a million times, when in fact the version that was in the trailer, it's like they ruined the most epic moment of the trailer. But yeah, what do I know? I'm not Spielberg or Lucas or anyone for that matter. I'm just nobody.
But far more thrilling than those looks, lines, and punches that I'd seen him deliver nearly 30 years earlier are moments like this. Or this. Getting to witness one of my favorite characters of all time change and evolve is a gift. Life is change, and getting to see one of the most iconic heroes of cinematic history change along with it is just equal parts sobering and comforting. And
Rest in peace, John Hurt. I miss John Hurt.
the very best thing that Lucas, Spielberg, and Ford do with Indy in Crystal Skull is allow their own maturity and growth to shine through that lead character. They've all reached points in their lives and their careers where
Life stops giving us things and stuff.
It looks like the video just got flagged. I don't know for sure. Because I can't really hear what he's saying here. I can't hear a damn thing. Yeah, I can't hear anything, so... Yeah, let me just get up. Man. Just when... Yeah, just when you think about it, the video ultimately ends. I think this video was probably flagged by Paramount, who unfortunately still owns the rights to all the first four films, instead of... I don't know why they just can't up and sell it to Disney. I mean... Sorry, the audio's glitching. Alright, so here's what Chris Hartwell is trying to say, in that these three men, pictures of Lucas, Ford, and Spielberg, who have accrued a lot of wealth and fame over the years, made a film that ultimately says, loving and trusting family and friends are more important than all of that. Well, I just like that. And for all these reasons, I believe that film is worth a second look. Yeah. So, yeah, I still have that little... I did this for a live commentary when I was bringing back my series on Instagram. The best way I could perfectly describe this movie, and it's, I think, sort of paraphrasing what Chris Stuckman said, the film is aggressively mediocre. It's kind of average in that way. It's not great, it's not awful, it's average. It's not the worst film I've ever seen. But I think the problem is, like, when you consider how great Raiders was, and even Temple of Doom, it's like, I feel like that's kind of the thing. In fact, let me type it here. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Which, yeah. Production. Yeah, it went through development. See, yeah, M. Night Shyamalan was hired to do Right for an Nintendo 2002 shoot, but he was overwhelmed writing a sequel to a film he loved like Raiders and claimed it was difficult to get Ford, Spielberg, and Lucas to focus. So that would make I mean, M. Night Shyamalan has said that he grew up with Steven Spielberg, so that makes sense. And I think the fact that he was like a little shy to do it, that's understandable, man. Yeah, it's interesting. Frank Darabont, who wrote various Young Indiana Jones episodes, was hired in May 2002. His script, entitled Indiana Jones and the City of Gods, was set in the 1950s with ex-Nazis pursuing Jones. Spielberg conceived the idea because of real-life figures such as Juan Perón in Argentina, who predicted Nazi war criminals. Darabont claimed Spielberg loved the script, but Lucas had issues with it and decided to take over writing himself. Lucas and Spielberg acknowledged and not ignore the Cold War and the Soviets were plausible. Not satirize. That was a thing. I think because Nazis at that point kind of felt like I understand where Spielberg would get the fatigue. Because think about it. Like, I think after you direct Schindler's List, that can affect you, how you feel about the Nazi situation, Especially because I think Spielberg was born in a devout Jewish family. And when he married Kate Capshaw, who played Willie Scott, in Temple of Doom, Kate Capshaw decided to convert to Judaism so she could marry Spielberg. And I think that's where Spielberg is like, yeah, because I think that's the thing that's what I know is that Spielberg was born in a devout Jewish family. I would have wanted to see the Frank Darabont, but it's like Lucas had issues with it and decided to take over writing himself. That's the problem. Is that here's the thing, Lucas, you don't have to have creative control on anything. I'm sorry. But yeah. Uh, see. Um, yeah. Although I will say this. If I had the choice to watch either Crystal Skull or The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, Crystal Skull all the way. It's irony, like, that both of these films came out in 2008. Like, here's the thing. The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor was so bad, they canceled The Mummy 4. I remember that, because at the end of The Mummy 3, at Dragon Emperor, they literally put the subtitle, sequel baiting, soon after mummies were found in Peru. And I think it was originally going to be called Rise of the Aztecs, and it was going to have Antonio Banderas as the villain. But, yeah. Like, look at this. Look at the critical reception. 12% Rotten Tomatoes. And, but this is what hurts me, is that Roger Ebert gave this movie a positive review. Yeah. But, yeah, look. I'm looking at the budget of this movie. $145 million. And look at this. The film, however, yeah. Yeah, it made 102 million in the United States and Canada. But internationally it was more successful, but it still was not enough. So it was still diminishing enough. Yeah, but it's like, look at this. Yeah, I think it just everything about the third Mummy movie it ruined that series, and that's why they had to reboot it back in 2017, and that failed. Even it's like, yeah, but in many ways, I really can't complain. It's not really my line to do it. Yeah, um, it's weird. Both movies were actually shot at the same time, because it says here Spielberg met with stunt coordinator Vic Armstrong, who doubled Harrison Ford in the first 3 films, to discuss these 3 action sequences he had envisioned. However, Armstrong was busy filming Tomb of the Dragon Emperor during shooting Crystal Skull, so Dan Bradley was hired instead. Yeah. Pablo Hellman. But yeah. I am, however, hoping that with Mangold taking over, that they at least give it a return to form. Like, return to form. I mean, from what I know, I think the Nazis are coming back. I don't know for sure what the hell's going on, but, yeah. What was I looking for? Yeah. I think it's also going to be released in IMAX. IMAX DMR Films list. List of films released in IMAX. That's going to be interesting. 2022. Yeah, Untitled, Indiana Jones 5, yeah. So, I'm probably gonna have to end the video here. Yeah, whatever, I'll leave a like. This was where Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull succeeds. I'll leave a link to the original video down below, as well as a link to Schmodown Entertainment Network. I still remember when it was called Schmoes Know. I'm just gonna call it Schmoes Know. That's because that's how I remember it. And also a link to Chris Hartwell's channel, because he's the one in charge of this series. Let me know what your opinion is on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you like me, who's like mixed on it? I'm kind of a mixed bag. Uh, yeah. Just let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna end the video here. So this is gonna be good. Watch this. Stay safe, everyone. And wish you all Godspeed, everyone. Take care.